And we're back with even more of the Shacknews Awards 2023. We've come back from our past days of deliberations for another deliberation on the Shacknews Award for Best Comeback of the Year 2023. I'm going to go through the nominees, and then we'll get to deliberating. Our first nominee is Cyberpunk 2077, which launched the Phantom Liberty expansion and also patched up the game quite a bit. Our next nominee is the F-Zero franchise, which actually released a new game this year after 20 years away from consoles. Our next nominee is the Street Fighter franchise, which had a comeback of sorts with Street Fighter 6 after Street Fighter 5 launched in a not so great state. Our next nominee is World of Warcraft, which has seen a comeback through the launch of Classic, and now we're starting to see Classic expansions launching. Another game that had a pretty solid comeback this year that also launched in a condition that had fans upset is Warhammer 40k Darktide. So they have been nominated. Shout out to Fat Shark. And lastly, another kind of unexpected game that showed up this year, Samba de Amigo. That franchise saw a return this year, and it was pretty neat. I think there was a VR game a few years ago, and then Ozzy reviewed another game this year. It was pretty delightful. So those are the nominees. Greg, do you want to talk about WoW?
Yeah, so WoW's been doing a lot of interesting things lately, like not just with Dragonflight and their substantial patch stuff, but like with Classic, they've been they just released Season of Discovery a few days ago, and it's been so popular, servers have been completely full, and like Classic's really made a resurgence recently with the hardcore mode. I just thought it was worth a nomination. Like, I don't think it'll win, but I definitely thought it was worth a nomination because they've done a lot of really interesting things with that game that is over 20 years old. So I think that's a very interesting way to keep it going as long as they can.
I was shocked during BlizzCon's opening ceremony when they were pandering to the different fan bases, and there's the Diablo fans, there's the Hearthstone fans, there's the Overwatch fans, and then there's the WoW fans, and there's this huge pop from the crowd that you haven't really heard. I know that BlizzCon had kind of not been a live event for a few years, but even previously, WoW wasn't getting that kind of pop from the crowd 4 or 5 years ago. So it was noticeable, right?
Oh yeah, no, for sure. It was pretty Overwatch heavy the last few years, which is arguably the most popular game. So I get it.
But yeah, WoW definitely making a comeback. Not that it was ever gone, but I really do think that Classic, like you mentioned, Classic hardcore, it's gotten a lot of people who were into the game back into it, who may not have liked, I don't know, where it is currently. Nice. Well, a worthy nomination. Next up, what do we want to hit next? Unfortunately, Ozzy's not here. But Samba de Amigo kind of came out, and it's fun. That franchise is still fun. Music games are still fun.
They put a bunch of Sonic tracks in it, which was awesome too. A bunch of Sonic Adventure 2 tracks, which was awesome to see. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of Sonic music. The music in that game's great. It's fun to play if you're into that sort of thing with motion controls.
Did they have a peripheral for it? Did it have anything you shake or no?
Maracas. There were no maraca peripherals.
No maraca peripheral. Damn.
But I think you can just play with Joy-Con on Switch. Yeah. Needs a mention. Shout out to Sega for looking around and seeing.
They also did the VR game was this year too, right? They also launched the VR.
I can't remember if it was this year or last year, but yeah, they've had a couple of. Let me just check real quick.
Yeah, I can see because Amigo, that was
Rhythm sorry, Party Central came out. It's actually the same game.
Okay, so
So
it's just a VR version.
yeah, yeah, it's on Switch, on Mac, and on MetaQuest Pro headsets. So, the
Got it.
Quest has the right kind of input devices to have that kind of dance game in it.
hmm
But yeah, it's just kind of cool to see a franchise come back. I think Party Central is the latest game.
Yep.
I would love to see Sega like remember that they have these other sweet franchises they could make games with, like, I don't know, Crazy
Golden
Taxi,
Axe.
Golden Axe, Altered
Yeah.
Beast. They'd never do another Altered Beast, would they? Anyway, wanted to at least shout out Someday Amigo. If you haven't played the game, it's pretty fun. Let's see. Bill, I see you hovered over this game on the spreadsheet, so I might as well just ask you. Would you like to talk about Cyberpunk 2077's comeback?
I would, but that was not my intention. Yeah, I mean, I know that we don't give out dates or anything, but just as we record today, Cyberpunk actually, in addition to the Phantom Liberty expansion and the 2.0 update, launched the 2.1 update, which I believe, as of its announcement a few days ago, was a surprise. I don't think we expected it, but talk about a game that one of the biggest criticisms when it launched in 2020, aside from the plethora of problems, was, hey, I can't ride these super cool public transit systems that are all around the city. Like, there literally looks like they were there, like they wanted you to ride them, and they were all closed off, and people were upset about that. And as of today, you can actually ride public transportation in Night City. And I was checking out the patch notes because obviously early enough today I haven't had a chance to check it out. But you can literally sit there and just watch the city pass by as you travel on the end cart. You can invite your love interest over to your apartment. They've added accessibility features, and given where Cyberpunk was for a couple of years, I feel like that's a pretty substantial return to the spotlight that it's made in 2023. That it was kind of I don't want to say forgotten, but I think people had given up on it for a while, and yeah, seems to be back. Good comeback.
hmm
But is it the best comeback? That's the question we're asking here in these deliberations. So let's continue on. Who would like to be the patron saint of Street Fighter here? Because the
Well,
Street Fighter franchise has had a comeback. Danny, you want to talk about this?
yes, I can talk about the our Lord and Savior Street Fighter 6 because hey, Street Fighter was down bad with Street Fighter 5. I mean, it was one of the worst launches I've ever been a part of.
Mhm.
Just where's my deli clip at?
Trash.
Yeah, it was that. It was that.
Oof.
But Street Fighter 6. We saw a little bit of it towards the end of Street Fighter 5, even with the way that they kind of shifted towards the community and getting feedback from the community as well, led into major changes when Street Fighter 6 came around. Pretty much the complete opposite of what kind of happened with 5. We had a great launch period, and also just plenty of things for people to do. Street Fighter, 5 infamously didn't even have an arcade mode ready to roll or a story mode set up day one, and they also were like, "Hey, we're offering free characters and stuff like that, but you gotta pay or play a ridiculous amount to get any of that." Street Fighter 6, on the other hand, came out the door swinging basically. One of the last $60 fighting games, the gen, and also just really smooth both connectivity and ways to play. World Tour mode was definitely something that I think really changed things up, and then also just the fun factor, accessibility as well was also which we had nominated in another category.
Mhm.
But it is clear that they want Street Fighter to be both a major franchise for Capcom, but also uh, kind of setting the definitive standard for the fighting game reign as well, and it's definitely showing on that end. So I've been quite impressed with just both the rollout, but also the consistency as far as patches and stuff like that, fixing bugs and other things there, but also just the fun factor. They introduced some new elements to the actual gameplay and stuff like that. We're also bringing in some interesting characters and really making this kind of like feel like a fresh entry in the series. Where there were times in 5 where folks were like, I don't know if I can keep doing this for money, even if there's a solid prize pool. This is rough. Um, but yeah, the biggest change for me was that there was a huge push with Street Fighter Five to limit players as far as what they could do. Creatively in both like combo chains and stuff like that. They wanted to kind of like standardize all of that stuff, which in a fighting game, I want as many options and combinations as possible to make me be able to play uh, my style of play in a fighting game. Street Fighter 4 was known for that because you could have 2 or 3 people playing the same character and they all felt different as far as the gameplay went. And you could tell when you're watching, say, Daigo, playing a Ryu compared to someone else. And that was lost in 5. And that kind of spirit is back here in 6 now, where I know who's playing, of a character when I see them playing now, which is a big factor.
Yeah, they learned, like Denny said, they learned so much from the 5 because they stumbled so hard. But then, like, it's good to see them go the opposite way and learn from those mistakes instead of just repeat them. So definitely defines comeback.
So I have some detailed notes on this subject, best comeback, and I just want to point out that Shacknews gave Capcom this award in 2018, and it just feels
Ooh.
like the company has been on this path for a while at this point.
Let's dig into this, because the thing about Street Fighter is Capcom has a habit of fucking up every other Street Fighter game.
Yeah.
Street Fighter 1 was commercially successful for its time because of its novelty. No one had ever really seen that form factor with the cabinets that had like the giant buttons you had to like punch to determine the strength of your blows. But it wasn't a good game. Like, people knew it then, it was just novel. Street Fighter 2 changed the world, changed video games. Street Fighter 3 was not that. And it didn't really become good until Third Strike, at which time, even today, that game didn't catch on until Third Strike came to Dreamcast and people didn't have to waste money trying to learn what was and still is a very obtuse game. Like, it's a cult classic, but that game was responsible for putting Street Fighter on ice. Then Street Fighter 4 comes up and Capcom's like, this is kind of an important franchise. We should treat it as such. And everyone's like, hooray, because it was just a remake of Street Fighter 2 with some new wrinkles. And then Street Fighter 5, they completely fumble. And then into Street Fighter 6, Capcom's like, we should treat this like it's an important franchise. And here we are. They keep fucking up. Street Fighter 7 is going to be bad, is what I'm saying. So Street Fighter 6.
Whoa, don't put it out there, please.
Awesome.
No, calm down.
I know.
Let's just hang on to Street Fighter 6 as long as we can.
I'm hoping we can. And I love Street Fighter 6, but like, it's just, this is a pattern,
It is a pattern. Wow. And I would say that pattern makes it less. I'm not saying it's not eligible for this category, but I am going to say that they set themselves up for a comeback with 5. And it's like, I might bring this up with some other nominees here too. It's actually a good segue to the next nominee, Warhammer 40k Darktide. This is a game that shipped in a condition that pissed off the entire community. And they have spent the last year listening and kind of fixing it to the point where this game is now fun. It may still not get everyone off of Vermintide 2, but Darktide is in a much better place now. And it probably could have also been nominated for Most Improved Game of the Year, but this was a pretty stacked year for Most Improved Game as well. But yeah, Darktide is another game where within its own journey, they've been able to fix it. So it's definitely a comeback worth noting.
I think it also points to the fact where Game Pass is not necessarily always a good thing, because like when it came out, they had contractually obligated to release on Game Pass day one, and they only released the PC version because it was not ready, but they had to release it anyway because of Game Pass. So like that's just a good example of like why Game Pass is not always a great thing to have. It's awesome value, but it can affect games negatively sometimes.
yeah, it's a good value for consumers. The value for developers is now up for debate.
Yep.
And I think it's been up for debate for a while, but the economics of Game Pass aside, Warhammer 40K Darktide had a really good year after a really bad year, which, you kind of need that. But like, comebacks need to be legendary. Like maybe the 2016 NBA Finals when the Cavs were down 3-1 to the 73-win Golden State Warriors, and then they somehow win 3 in a row, 2 in Golden State to win the NBA Final. That's a comeback, right? Shacknews in the last decade has been a comeback. These are legendary comebacks. Is Cyberpunk 2077 of that ilk? Is the question.
It depends what Twitter
so
you're
sure.
in or what groups you're in.
I'm part of F-Zero Twitter, and let me tell you about our final nominee here.
No,
We
boy.
did not have a game for 20 years. We were a hopeless lot. We were a lot of folks that just kind of sat around waiting. We would see these random indie projects that looked like F-Zero X, and we'd be like, hey, that looks cool. You know how many times I've been told I should play Wipeout in the last 20 years? Oh, it's just like F-Zero. No, it's not. It's not. I'm sorry. But like so many times we've been pandered to by other companies saying, hey, this is like F-Zero. This is like F-Zero. This is like... No, none of them were. You know what F-Zero... You know what's like F-Zero? F-Zero 99, which launched this year, shadow dropped during a Nintendo Direct after 20 years of just not even being a thing on any console outside of random references in Smash Brothers trailers where Captain Falcon's eating ramen, or the worst minigame in Nintendo Land on Wii U, or one track in a Mario Kart 8 Deluxe expansion pass, or, I could go on and on and on. But this game's actually great, and I think that's part of what makes the best comeback of the year, is not that, oh, you shipped a really crappy game, or a game that was in a crappy state in 2020, and now 3 years later, after you buy some DLC, it's not trash anymore. Is that a comeback? Sure. Is it better than reviving a 20-year-old dead franchise out of thin air? No, it's not, in my opinion. And obviously, this panel will have to determine this. But yeah, F-Zero, come on. No one expected this. And no one expected it would be this. Like it would be an online multiplayer battle royale game. No one could have seen this coming.
Their release was like if Steve Jobs did a one more thing like in the middle of a presentation and then just kept going. Like it was like, wait, what? Like it was so surprising.
But it would be like if Steve Jobs jumped out of Steve Jobs Theater today and announced one more thing. And he's been dead for 12 years. That's what this is like. It's
almost
like if Steve Jobs
as
showed
F-Zero. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Steve Jobs has been dead for less time than the F-Zero franchise.
Well, I don't know. So you said who could have seen it coming? You did in an interview with Tim Sweeney. We have it on record.
It's not just an interview with Tim Sweeney. I've said this in other categories. If you talk to me for enough in the past 10 years, if you talk to me for a certain amount of time, this would come up in our conversation. And the fact that it happened is just unbelievable. But yeah, it's some of these franchises, yes, Street Fighter V sucked, right? But David just went over the history of odd versus even Street Fighters. Warhammer 40K Darktide did not ship in the best condition. And they have come back from that. Samba de Amigo, I think, is probably the most similar to the F-Zero case here, where it was really a franchise that people had forgotten about, people kind of left for dead. But there was nothing wrong with Samba de Amigo, and there was never anything wrong with F-Zero. That's what I think's different when you compare it to some of these other nominees in the category. That's all I'm saying. It's not that they're not deserving. I just think that there needs to be some differentiation put on these. Some of these games shipped in bad condition. Some of these franchises shipped previous games in bad condition. And some of these franchises did nothing wrong and got exactly what the fans finally wanted. And I think, yeah, that's F-Zero, and that's F-Zero 99 this year. But I think we should put it to a vote. What do you say? Does anyone else have anything they want to add to any of these nominees' cases? Okay. Let's start the vote then. I'm going to start with Sam.
I think F-Zero makes the most sense. So that's where my vote's going.
Sam votes for F-Zero. Bill.
Yeah, F-Zero. Not even for your argument today, but for all of the time I have listened to you asking for an F-Zero, begging for an F-Zero, being defeated in knowing that it will never arrive. You convinced me before you even started arguing, sir. You had me at hello.
Well, you got boost power. Anyway, Greg.
Gonna go with F-Zero.
F-Zero. I'm gonna hold my vote off for now. I think people might know what.
Gee, I wonder what his vote's gonna be.
Donovan.
Let me just think about
Oh
this.
boy.
Could be anything.
Yeah, I'll also vote for F-Zero.
Hi, man.
Sweet.
Danny.
See, you guys are putting the pressure on me because I'm like, the sweep would be nice.
Sleeps are overrated.
You got to do you, man. You got to do you.
But at the same time, I'm still going with Street Fighter because
Mhm.
I was there on day one when that PlayStation could not connect the server. And now here we are in this day and age with a full new Street Fighter that has crossplay that works great. And I feel like, hey, you know what? Despite David trying to jinx it, I hope this leads to a path of consecutive Street Fighters being good. And
I'm
it
not
starts with this
jinxing anything.
foundation. It starts
You
with this
know,
foundation. Third Strike, I
Capcom
love
is
Third Strike. All right, so eventually they got around to it too on that end. It's a lot of people's favorite Street Fighter.
Well,
So,
like
hey,
what fighting game? Like fighting games are all about the comeback, right? Isn't
Yeah.
that like
Yes,
the most
yes, the
epic
comeback
moments in
factor is
Evo
real.
history? Yeah, like comebacks are a huge part of the fighting game community. So no, look. These are all worthy nominees, but it just feels like one's better than all the others. That's all I'm saying. David, I think you
I'll go
already
fast.
told me you're
F-Zero. Yeah.
F-Zero. Okay, TJ voted for Street Fighter. So don't
Yes,
worry,
TJ.
Dan. You weren't the only one. And let's go. I just want to make sure I got everyone else's vote. Who's not here?
Gotta
Ozzy.
check the
Ozzy.
mail-in ballots.
Ozzy voted for F-Zero 99. And Steve, the host of the Steve Tendo Show, voted for F-Zero 99. So my vote doesn't matter, but I'm going to vote for F-Zero 99 too.
I mean,
And
it is a banger.
I thought you were going Samba de Omega there for a second. I thought,
Just
You
for
know,
Street
like-
Fighter, just for a
Too,
split second.
like, honestly though, like Samba de Amigo deserves some love. All these games deserve love. Like
Yeah, for
Cyberpunk
sure.
deserves love for what they did. Like it is a much better game. But this isn't necessarily the most improved category. This isn't necessarily, best RPG or best game set in 2077. It's not the best fighting game category either, so but this is the best comeback of the year 2023. And I have to say, F-Zero 99 has ushered in a new era for the F-Zero franchise, and I don't think this is the end. I think this is the beginning of something. Kind of like what happened in 2018 when Capcom won Best Comeback. Look at the last 5 years of releases at Capcom. It's been kind of amazing. So, congratulations to Nintendo and the team that no one has spoken to yet over at F-Zero 99. You have won the Shacknews Award for the best comeback of the year 2023. And I still can't believe it.